This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon. You are listening to The Bigger Picture with me, Lee Chui Lin. Neurological dysfunction can be a frightening thing, entailing as it does the feeling of losing control over one's mind and body. Diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's loom over our heads like spectres as we begin to age. Dr. Darrick Kim, who is the former professor of medical chemistry and pharmacognosy from the College of Pharmacy in Chicago, tells us about natural interventions for neurological dysfunction. Welcome to the show, Dr. Kim.
Hello.
So first of all, could you share your background in the sciences with us?
Well, yes, I have double major in both biology and chemistry from UC Irvine in California. After that, I have a master's degree in physical organic chemistry, and after that, I have a PhD in organic synthetic chemistry of a natural product. But before that, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an oncologist, cancer specialist. And along the way, instead of just taking one patient at a time, I wanted to find a drug that would help conquering the cancer, the disease itself, so I can help people by millions. And I also, at the same time, I also worked in the neuropathology lab in the medical school in UC Irvine for 3 years.
So, from that interest in cancer, what interested you in neurological dysfunction?
Well, as a scientist who wanted to be a cancer specialist, I did drug discovery. And as I learned more and more, I learned that cancer is not something that we can conquer, because in a very harsh way, every one of us are cancer patients. But we are fortunate, most of us are fortunate enough to not to have a cancer blown up in our body so that we go to hospital and say you have a cancer, because our immune system takes care of a cancer cell that pops up every day in our body. And so with respect to cancer, lifestyle that boosts your immune system in the body is the key of taking care of cancer. But once I learned that, I realized whatever that I try to do, that discovering a cancer drug to help people was very, very limited, and I was being misguided. So I wanted to do something else that would really help people. And so it got me restudy all the science, and got me back into the neuropathology, neuroscience that has to do with Alzheimer's disease.
What are the different ways in which neurological dysfunction might manifest within our bodies?
Well, the one that everyone's afraid of or talk about the most are Alzheimer's disease. Second would be Parkinson's disease, and it follows by ALS, multiple sclerosis, Huntington's disease, Down syndrome, and so on.
A lot of what we're talking about right now, between cancer as well as neurological dysfunction is really, sadly, part of an aging community, because as we age, these are things that apparently if all of us live long enough, we will all get cancer.
That is not true.
That is not true.
That is not true. Even little children get cancer. 57 years ago, cancer in little children were very, very rare. But as the Western civilization take over the world, and our lifestyle change, now we find more and more people with cancer, especially children's cancer, and it all have to do with the lifestyle of their parents. They are being subject to the children that undermines their health and immune system that causes the cancers to come out. Only Alzheimer's disease is a disease that has to do with aging. So there's a big, big difference. Since I talk about cancer, diabetes. Unless you have a genetic problem that you have born with a diabetic type 1, diabetic type 2, that is environment-induced, the lifestyle-induced disease, and even little children gets it. It's not disease of aging. Only Alzheimer's disease is.
And as we rapidly become an aging society, is this something that we're going to have to be increasingly worried about, increasing incidences of Alzheimer's?
Absolutely, because that's the only disease that comes with aging.
And everything else is really sort of a combination of environment and lifestyle and possibly genetics.
Yes, absolutely. You see, our brain cells have been degenerating since the age of 12 and going to 13. Some person calculated the speed is about 100,000 neurons a day, every day. Think about it. As you turn a teenager, your brain cells been deteriorating about 100,000 neurons a day, every day. That's big number. So 1 year would be 365 times 100,000 neurons, and you add that up. But the thing is, as you age, like 30s, 40s, and 50s, the number of neurons deteriorating and dying away increases. Some person calculated, Dr. Michael Rafai calculated that when you reach around age 65, to the general public, your brain cells degenerate over 2 million cells a day. Now, that is just something to think about.
That's a lot of cumulative numbers as well.
Absolutely.
And obviously, our memory is something that tends to go as we age. It's something that you see, I guess, more commonly among the elderly. What causes this to happen? Is it the dying neurons, as you mentioned, or are there other elements that cause our memory to start degenerating?
Well, as we age, 100,000 cells a day, it's basic. It's just the aging process. But as we age, with respect to Alzheimer's disease, beta-amyloid, the bad peptide that our cells, every cell in the body generate, start to accumulate in the brain and make the brain cells die in a larger quantity. So when the beta-amyloid accumulates, it becomes very toxic, and your brain cells die by millions. And when that happens, your memory goes, because brain cells, the neurons, are the cells that are responsible for all the memories, remembering things, and controlling our body.
Is memory something that can be regained? Because, we talk a lot about exercising our memory, especially for people who are edging towards, old age. It's something that many, many people tell them to do. Remember 1 card a day, for example. There are all these memory exercises. But once you begin to lose your memory, is it something that you can get back?
Well, yes, you can, but not by playing cards or doing the word game. Because those games, those exercises does not address the cause of the disease. It helps the healthy brain cells, or the cells that are healthy enough, to reroute their connections, but does not prevent neurons to die, from dying.
And what is the line between simple memory loss and an indication of a deeper disease, such as Alzheimer's? Simple
memory loss, in my opinion, would be just forgetting things now and then. But when they become severe, you see, our brain, when we're young, our brain, it's like a road without any traffic jam. Question is given, answer comes out at very fast, normal speed. But as we age and brain cells degenerate, the normal flow of the communication, the information from one neuron to another with respect to the memory gets blocked. So they have to find a new route to come up with the answer, or it gets processed. So it slows down. So in the beginning, you may forget things briefly, off, and comes right back on, and off and comes right back on. But as you age, the off period becomes longer. So on and off, and you have to wait a little bit, and comes back on, and on, off, on. But as you really age, it's going to go on, off, long time, and comes back on. And that happens to everybody. About 2 years ago, there was a paper published by, I forget his name, but a British Journal of Medicine. And they did a study, and conclusion was this. To the general public, to most people in mid-40s have Alzheimer's symptoms. And what is this? That's the on-off switch. That's what's happening to everyone.
And at what point do you need to be concerned? Because, this on-off, it's something that's more obvious to other people. For us, we sometimes just dismiss it. I can't remember my car keys, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
At what point do you really need to register that, okay, maybe this is a problem and I might need to go seek help?
Like any disease, early recognition of a disease state, early symptoms is the key. Because just like cancer, early stage cancer you can cure. But if you wait, you're going to go through major surgery and chemotherapy, and most likely you will die. Alzheimer's disease is the same thing. When it's just happening, you go, I have heard that that's the beginning of the symptom. I'm going to take care of it. Then you will never have to worry about Alzheimer's disease. See, little on-off switch, if you can overcome that from the beginning, that you are totally free from it, then there's absolutely no way you're going to have Alzheimer's disease.
I'm speaking today to Dr. Darrick Kim about natural approaches to neurological dysfunction. He is a former professor of medical chemistry and pharmacognosy from the College of Pharmacy in Chicago. Coming up, we will address what Dr. Kim just said about avoiding Alzheimer's on The Bigger Picture, BFM 89.9.
You're listening to BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon. You are listening to The Bigger Picture. I am Lee Chui Lin, and joining me today is Dr. Darrick Kim, former professor of medical chemistry and pharmacognosy from the College of Pharmacy in Chicago. We are discussing natural approaches to neurological dysfunction. So we've established what neurological dysfunction is and some of the diseases which manifests from it. And today we are focusing on Alzheimer's. So I'm interested in what you said just before then about how if we can just overcome the early stages, then it is something that we can be free from. How does that work scientifically?
The memory coming on and off has to do with how many brain cells deteriorating and not functioning properly. And as I have told you earlier, since we're going to teenagers, 13, our brain cells been deteriorating at the rate of 100,000 cells a day. And it accumulates. And when it accumulates, the delay, it's like a traffic jam. When there's minor traffic, there's a little delay, a few minutes here and there. But when you pile them up in every corner, every cross section, it becomes big. Just like that. It's very additive. And towards the end, it's going to be not just additive, but it's going to be multiplicative. And that comes down to a very severe and seriousness of the symptom that you can really undermine your lifestyle and your being.
So we're talking about clearing the early traffic jams, so to speak.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
So Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, they are neurodegenerative diseases, and they are confusing and often, not very well understood. What can you tell us about it, just to clear up the definition of what they are?
Alzheimer's disease, the cause of the disease is accumulation of a beta-amyloid peptide in our brain. And as they accumulate, aggregate in our brain, it becomes toxic. And it causes the brain cells to die. Parkinson's disease, it's different protein comes to play called alpha-synuclein. And as the alpha-synuclein accumulates, it becomes toxic. But Alzheimer's disease, beta-amyloid accumulation damages cholinergic neurons, that it has to do with memory. Parkinson's has to do with dopaminergic neurons, that has to do with motions and movements. So that's the big difference.
What do you hope to contribute towards existing research at this point in time? Because obviously a lot of research has gone into both diseases, but that doesn't mean that we are, we always understand necessarily a cure, for example.
When you look at a disease, you don't want to alleviate the symptoms. Alleviating symptoms, it's very fascinating because you can feel the effect right away. But you got to focus on the cause of the disease and try to remove the cause. Then you don't have to worry about symptoms because you're not going to have symptoms anyways if the cause of the disease is removed. That, I think, is most important.
And what has been the difficulty in identifying a cure for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's?
Money. They want to control. See, pharmaceutical industry is very peculiarly deceiving. There's no pharmaceutical industry that wants to cure a disease. Because at the moment you cure the disease, you can't make money anymore. So pharmaceutical industry, big pharma, they're more focused on alleviating the symptoms so that you have a continuous influx of patients to continue taking your products, and you make continuously more money. And at the same time, they're interested in not drugs that has side effects that would come not next day, but years later. For example, the best example would be cholesterol drugs, those statin drugs. Once you're taking statin drugs, after 1-2 years later, doctors say, you know what, we must take a look at your liver health, and they find any flaws, then they give you another drug. That will cause more problem later on. And eventually you will have not only cholesterol problem, but liver problem, that you have to take extra medication. Then you will have hypertension problems that you end up taking more drugs until you die. And that is not the way to go.
Considering the degenerative nature of the diseases we're talking about, what would a cure need to do and function as? Does it need to play the role of reversing all the damage, or, what would it have to do?
With respect to neurological dysfunction, Alzheimer's disease, once a neuron is dead, it's dead. You cannot replace it. All the information that it has stored are gone. But for any neuron, it takes time to die. It doesn't die overnight just because, it stopped functioning properly. So it's a process of deterioration. And as it deteriorates more and more, it becomes weaker and weaker, and it dies. And with respect to Alzheimer's disease, what we want to do is remove the cause of the disease, which is the beta-amyloid accumulation, and so that it changes the environment. Once you remove them, it'll change the environment that the neurons would start to recuperate. And you want to assist the recuperation process, the repairing process, so that not well-functioning neurons will end up functioning properly. Like you had a road construction, you want to clear the road construction, then you will have a traffic flowing again. That would be a treatment. But can it cure? If you catch the patients in very early stage and prevent anything bad from happening, then I think you can say it's a cure. But when it comes to neurological dysfunction, there is no really a cure, but there will be treatment. The best way is the prevention in the early stage.
Right now, there is no cure, as you just mentioned, and medication, as you also mentioned, merely functions to assist with the symptoms or to help alleviate the symptoms. What are some of these symptoms that can be managed by medication?
The current drugs that's out there, Aricept, that's a Alzheimer's drug made from acai. It helps helps the patient function better, like going to the bathroom by themselves or dressing themselves.
An independent life.
Yeah, about 3 to 6 months. But since it's not addressing the cause of the disease, they deteriorate after that the same way. The problem is this: the side effect from taking the medication is a lot more severe than anything you want to consider, because that side effect causes the patients to take extra medication to manage themselves. And once you're hooked on it, then your body's got totally messed up. You end up, although you do not take Aricept anymore, you end up taking other medications because your intestinal system, digestive system has been compromised.
So would you say then that there is a stigma attached to Alzheimer's disease?
Yes, there is. But that stigma is very unjustified. We have the stigma because for all these years we thought that there is no cure, no prevention, no treatment for the Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's. And the lifestyle, the way the patient goes or passes away, the way they deteriorate and before they die, it's very, very ugly. And it's something that you don't want to see from your loved ones, your parents, grandparents that used to take care of you and you love so dearly. That is the stigma it gives.
And so with all this said, you've established also what some of the issues are, especially in terms of taking a long term course of medication for Alzheimer's. When did you start taking an interest in natural medicine, to help with the disease?
When we look at all the pharmaceutical drugs, they are natural product based. So scientists, especially people in the university, and nowadays a pharmaceutical industry too, put a lot of effort looking for drug candidates from the nature. And once they discover it, then they trigger the compound or making derivatives to make it more increase their efficacy in our body. And so every drug that's out there have been natural products based. And so by nature, by training, I am trained to think or discover drugs from the nature. My case would be herbs.
Synthesizing and compounding pharmaceuticals is something that many people regard as dangerous if not in trained hands. What does it involve exactly? Why is it so worrying?
If you're just isolating natural products, the drug candidates from the nature, you use chemicals, solvents and things, but they're easily removed. But if you're synthesizing them, then it's a totally different issue. You start from raw material that could be very, very toxic. As you put them together and build a molecule, you improve their efficacy and everything. See, towards the end, it doesn't matter what substance you start with. But when you make the target molecule, we go through a very rigorous purification process, remove the impurity, possible toxic substance in there, over 99.9%, so that it doesn't harm us. So the fear is man-made. It's not real.
Take us through the process of creating medication. You mentioned there the process of trying to, get to that molecule. But when it comes to medication, what do you need to do in order to create, that pill or whatever?
Depending on the drug that you're talking about. If you're talking about industry-made synthetic compounds, you do the drug discovery process. You go out on the field, you find the drug candidates, and using science equipment, you discover, you find out the chemical structure, the property, and bring it to the lab, and you find a way to synthesize them chemically, and you make them. If you're just doing the natural product chemistry, that is you're extracting out drug candidates, the drug compounds from nature, then you go out on the field, you find the drug candidate, the plants, then you find a way to agriculturally produce mass quantity, and you find a way to extract them out, and you get the drug candidates from that. So it's a lot, in a way, more rigorous, but then again less rigorous.
And how do you measure and prove the efficacy of natural ingredients?
We call it hit and miss, shotgun. We have a target, and in the dark we shoot. And if we see something that hit the target, then we go after it. Nowadays, we have the science has been improved so much that we have much understanding how we can design and trying to make improvements. But a lot of times, it's just still wishful thoughts because our body is very, very complicated. That it's not just, it involves many different aspects and routes for a drug to work in our body to alleviate or cure.
But like any other thing, I suppose, results need to be replicatable.
Yes.
Yep. So once you've kind of shot the gun and the bullet hits the target, you need to make sure that you can do it again.
Absolutely.
You currently hold 3 USA patents on curcumin, ginkgo, and ginger. What can you tell us about each component?
Well, they protect brain cells by removing the beta-amyloid, and they just make the cells stronger so that even in the presence of beta-amyloid, cells are not affected. And it removes the beta-amyloid from the system if it's already been there. And it repairs damaged neurons, the axons and dendrites. And that's how they work, every one of them. But I have those 3 in there in my products in different ratio, and the formulation is they synergistically, they help each other, the efficacy increased. See, people used to think, turmeric, everyone knows turmeric is very, very good
for a lot of things.
For a lot of things. But when it comes to curcuminoids and Alzheimer's disease, the curcumin, the major compound, or that's the compound that most people talk about most of the time, the efficacy is not that good. We have other compounds in there that are 50, 100 times better. But because we don't know enough, people do not address that. But as a scientist, we know that is the case. But when you combine them together, even more so, they synergistically, the efficacy increases, they're better.
So each of these are, you can buy them in the supermarket. So what would you say what are the benefits of, eating a supplement that's combined these compounds, as opposed to just incorporating a lot of turmeric, ginger, and ginkgo into your daily life, for example?
I get a lot of questions on that. And for the last 10 years, I get the question. So one day I sat down and calculated, and this is the conclusion. You gotta eat 10 to 15 bowls of curry rice every day, in the morning and night, about 20 years to have that effect. Then taking what I discovered, what I made. What I made has a concentrated active components in there, and they're blended and formulated such a way that they're synergistically enhance each other. That you cannot get from just eating a large amount of those. If you want to do it, then you will be just eating turmeric, ginger, and ginkgo all the time, but nothing else.
Also, while incorporating a lot of omega-3s and everything else.
And other things. Yes, absolutely.
What are the benefits of using such natural ingredients?
What's the benefit? Okay. Taking those natural ingredients, we have long history of having used those compounds or the natural ingredients. So in other words, they are safe. That would be number one. When we did the research, see, when you do the cancer research, we want to kill the cancer cells. When it comes to Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's, we want to save the brain cells. And I don't know whether you know this or not, but when doctors and people worry about side effects, we are talking about liver toxicity. Means those compounds, the chemicals in there are very, very toxic. And liver cells in our body are one of the strongest cells in our body. So if the things that you eat, if it's toxic and damage liver cells, that means it's very, very toxic. But the neurons are most delicate cells in our body. And we are trying to save those cells, the neurons, most delicate cells in our body. See, so we know with respect to with respect to Alzheimer's disease, the compounds that we discover are safe because we are saving most delicate cells in our body, which is neurons.
On the flip side of that, what would you have to say in response to people who just argue or feel that natural ingredients aren't as efficacious as others?
It's a big hype. It's brainwashed, being brainwashed by big pharma because they want to control and they have a lot of money for lobbying and brainwashing people. That's it.
And is there anything that we can do as a preventative measure against neurological dysfunction? How can we start clearing out the passageways, so to speak?
Based on my research, what I discovered is the best. And absolutely no toxicity and no complications. So I discovered those compounds, and my parents are the first one to benefit from it because my father had Alzheimer's symptoms 12 years ago, and I was very, very concerned. So I went into the lab and took out those things that I discovered, formulated, and gave to my father. Now he's 85. He's completely free from the disease, and in fact, person in 85, he has mental capacity of person in late 50s. So me and my wife both agree, my wife is a doctor, agree that he's completely from the disease, and he got about 25 years younger instead of getting older.
I've been speaking to Dr. Darrick Kim, former professor of medical chemistry and Pharmacognosy from the College of Pharmacy in Chicago. We have been discussing natural approaches to neurological dysfunction right here on The Bigger Picture, BFM 89.9.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.